Right, so we have our pieces done. We just need to make a chessboard. Okay, so chessboard is easy. Make a new plane, and in the channel box, polyplane. By default, yours is probably 10 and 10 here. Just set this to 8 by 8 because chessboards are typically 8 by 8 squares. So 8 squares in the one direction and 8 squares in the other. So I'm just going to scale this up. Now what I'm going to do, and this is a good time to do it now, I'm just going to take my biggest piece, which is my king. I'm just going to duplicate it off here. And I'm going to hit Alt 5 to turn on wireframe mode. Okay, so I'm just going to put this somewhere where I can see, right, if I bring it down here, you see that this square is a little too big, right, for this chessboard. So what I'm going to do is actually scale it down just a bit. And again, see how that sits in there. Still a little bit big here, so let's go down a bit more. You know, something like that. Because otherwise the pawns, you know, if the squares are too big, you could even fit 2 pawns almost on one square. So this is still a little bit big here. Let's scale it down some more. And there we go. That feels good. Give the king a little bit of room around him there. Maybe go up a little bit. And that should be good. So this is a good size for this board to be. Okay, you can delete this piece because it was just a copy. So I'm going to select this, hit Control 1 to isolate. Okay, so double click the outer edges here in edge mode. Scale, shift and drag just a little bit. We want to create these small faces right here, these really thin faces right here. Okay, it's just going to give us some extra detail. Now, the problem is, you can see how this goes off at an angle. That's because we're scaling outwards from a center point, so these are sort of going out at an angle. But we can straighten them back out again by just selecting one of these, hold V, and drag to the left in this case, and you'll see that it'll snap there. If you keep going, it's going to snap to the next one and keep snapping. But you want it to snap straight like that. So we're just going to hold V, snap straight, hold V. This one I pull the other direction, right? So I'm just going to go around and do that. In fact, oops, hold V and grab this one. Now these since, and I could have done this with the first row as well, since these are basically doing the same thing, if I hold V and push backwards, you'll see that so shift, select those, hold V, push back a little bit, you'll see that they straighten out there as well. So that way you can do 2 sides at once, and that'll be a little bit faster. So hold V, drag it till they straighten out. This is called point snapping. Okay, so basically you can see how the center point of my selection is here, and I wanted to align with this point right there. So I'm going to pull towards that holding V, and you'll see now my center point is aligned with that. Okay, and then these I'm just going to do individually here. Let's line them up, hold V, drag till it snaps. The one in the center is already straight because it didn't move sideways, it moved outward. So that one's fine. Okay, so there is that. Again, edge mode, shift, and scale from the center. We're going to scale a longer distance this time. Okay, and then W for move tool, shift, drag downward, you know, as thick as you want your board to be. And I'm also just going to scale outwards a little bit. Scale out from the center. It's going to angle these walls a little bit here. Okay, so, and then what I'm going to do is shift and just drag straight down so that this section here is vertical. Okay, just drag down like that. Okay, then multi-cut. Shift right click, go to multi-cut, hold control, and we're going to click somewhere, maybe here. So double click that edge loop, scale it in. Multi-cut again, maybe here somewhere. You know, R for scale, double click that edge loop, maybe scale it outward. Okay, we're just creating like a profile here. Let's multi-cut again, maybe somewhere down here. Scale that one in. Okay, multi-cut here. Maybe scale this one out again. Split this one, scale this one in. Maybe pull it down a little bit. Scale in. Then we just bevel. You can see when we bevel, that sort of rounds things out. Let me come lower here. Just pull this down, then bevel it. And if we increase the fraction, and we can add more segments. Right, increase the fraction. So that gives us a nice curve. Same with this one here, bevel. It's going to give us a curve there. Same with this one, bevel. Shift right click, go to bevel. And something like that. Maybe we increase the segments and increase the fraction. Something like that. Maybe I take this loop up here, just scale it in a little bit so that it starts to move backward. Maybe do this one too. Okay, so you can sort of come up with a profile that you like. Maybe just so you can sort of adjust as you go. Okay, so now if we smooth this, everything sort of over smooths, rounds out, and whatnot. What we're going to do is go into face mode, and we want to face, hold tab, and we're just going to select all the squares of the chessboard. I'm just dragging while holding tab and left mouse button. And then I also want to select these, but I don't want to do them with tab. It'll take longer. So I just control right click, go to grow selection and grow. It's going to expand out to there. Hold shift with the move tool, drag down. And we're going to drag down quite a bit here. Then we want to separate these faces from this, basically this frame right here. So shift right click, extract faces. Now before I do that, notice these are part of polyplane 1. Now if I shift right click, extract faces, see, polyplane 1 is still there, but if you open it, now there's two different poly surfaces. One is for the inside, one is for the outside. So I'm going to select them both and hit Shift P just to bring them out of the polyplane. And then I'll delete history and notice the polyplane disappears. So now I can select this, get my move tool, and move it back up a little bit higher. Okay. Now I'm going to, Control 1 is going to bring back everything. Select the frame, Control 1 again to isolate it. Then I'm going to double click the bottom edge, do a fill hole, select this face, and scale tool, shift, scale in just a bit. Okay. Then what we can do, basically, this is an n-gon here. This big face here is an n-gon. So we need to basically connect each of these to the matching one on the other side. Easy way to do that is go to vertex, select two of them, shift right click, connect components. Then do it again. But this time I hit G because G just repeats my last command. So just hit G and it's just going to put an edge between them. So select that one, shift select that one, G, select that one, shift select G, select, shift select G, and then we're going to do these as well. G now. Oh, okay. So maybe it doesn't work when you're going over multiple. Yeah, so it doesn't work. So that for that we'll have to multi-cut from here to here. Here to here and so on. Okay, so there, there. There we go. So that should close this off really well. Then up here, we want to fill hole again. So select the edges, shift right click, fill hole. Select that face, scale, hold shift, scale in till we get a little thin strip of faces going around there. Then shift right click and poke face. Because here we're not too worried about how things look because it's going to be underneath the chessboard. Okay, so again, let's smooth it and you can see that again, everything sort of over smooths. Right, it's too soft and so we need to start doing our bevels. So I'm going to select the corners, just double click, shift double click. Shift double click, and that one, shift double click. Now we don't want these faces in here to be selected, so I can just control drag over them and then also control click to get rid of this little edge right here. Okay, and then shift double click this, shift double click this, shift double click here, shift double click there, shift double click there, there, and there. Okay, and you know what? Let's shift double click these going around this way. This is gonna help. Okay, then shift right click bevel edge. Let's see, it's increased the fraction a little bit, so it's a little, I don't want it too sharp. So now if I smooth it, you can see I have a nice frame there with some nice detail on it. Okay, so that's the model for that is done. Okay, so Control 1 to bring everything else back. Select the other poly surface. Control 1 to isolate it. Select this edge. Move tool W, shift and drag down. Okay, to make those walls. Then we're going to bevel these edges right here. So double click, double click, double click, double click. I'm holding shift while I'm doing this. Now I'm going to have to do them. Let's just check. If I bevel, you know what? It might actually work. So shift double click these as well. Okay, so that's what we have. And I'm just going to check to make sure. Yeah, it looks like it will work. Okay, so, and then also we want to select these. So shift double click these. Okay, then what we're going to do is bevel edge. We're going to put 3 segments in here. We're going to bring down the fraction so it's not so big. We want this very thin. Something like that. Okay. Then now what we're going to do, because we use 3 fractions, we got a thin polygon right there. So I'm going to select that, shift, double click the one next to it. Notice that it'll select the whole row. Do the same here. Shift click this one, shift double click the one next to it. It's going to select all the way around. And we're just going to go this, right? So click, shift click one, shift double click the one next to it. Shift click, shift double click. Okay, we're just going to go all the way around until we have all these little thin polygons selected. Okay. Oops. Okay, so you just, as long as you, if that messes up, undo and try again. There we go. Shift click, shift double click. Okay. Move tool W. Now, instead of just moving them down like this to create these little trenches, because on the sides it's not gonna work, and we're gonna get this going on here, which we don't want. So I'm gonna undo that. Instead, I'm going to hold Control and my mouse, and I don't have to be at the move tool. My mouse is over here. Hold Control, middle mouse drag to the left. Notice if I go left and right, they'll either go outward or inward. Okay, so I'm just going to move them in a bit till we have something like that. Okay, that little, right, if you go that way. So we just want to move them in just a hair like that. All right. Then we can now bevel this and these corners. So shift double click corners. And let me just see here. We might, let's go ahead. Yeah, just shift double click those corners. Because right now if you smooth it, obviously it's a little too smooth. So now we're going to bevel these. And we're going to just lower the fraction a decent amount there. And these stay at 2 segments. And then notice this face is now an N-gon because of what's going on here. So what we want to do is go to Vertex, select this tool. That is the the target well tool, and we need it in vertex mode. I'm just going to click outside to make sure no vertices are already selected. Click and drag that one there. Click and drag that one there. Right, so that's what's going to happen there. And we'll do another corner. Click this one, drag it to the middle. Drag that one to the middle. So it just merges the points at the destination. Like that, and like that. Is that 4? Oh, last one. Like that, and like that. Then the next thing we do, because we got 2 triangles here, just going to take the edge in the middle and hit backspace. Right, so we're just going to go around and do that. Backspace. Okay, that's going to get rid of our N-gon. And also get rid of these triangles. Oops. There we go. Did I get them all? Yes. Okay, so if we smooth it now, you can see we have these nice visible squares. So I give it a little bit of dimension by actually modeling them in instead of just using a texture map to do it. Okay, hit 1 to unsmooth. Now we're just going to give a little bit more support edges in here. So shift right click, multi-cut, control and middle mouse click. So we're cutting exactly halfway. So I'm just going to cut all these at 50%. Just control middle mouse clicking as I go. And we're going to do the ones this side as well. Control middle mouse click. Just like that. So each square is now divided into 4 smaller squares. That's just going to hold our detail better. Okay, so that is what we have. If I control 1 to bring back the frame, just select these two and control 1 again just to see what they look like. You see this fits in there nicely. Now this might be a little low. If I select this, I'm going to bring this up just a bit. We want it to be a little bit lower than the frame, but not too much. Okay, so we got the 8x8 squares, and then we got a little border going around, which is just going to add to the detail of the board. All right. Then the other thing we can do if we want, because this, so I'm going to pull up an image here. So this is what we're going for, right? We have this the alternating squares in here. Notice they also have this little thin white area going all the way around, just as a border. And then you got the frame. And notice that the frame is actually 4 pieces of wood. This is one separate piece of wood, that's one separate. And they're cut at a 45-degree angle because when you put those together, they form a 90-degree angle. This is called a miter cut. Okay, it's called a miter cut. And you notice that the wood grain flows in the direction, along the length of the board, not along the width, because that makes it stronger. Right? If it was flowing along the width, it'd be easy to snap them in half. So this is going to be for, and you can kind of see a little, because these are 2 separate pieces of wood, there might be a little sort of indent in here. So if we want to sort of simulate that, we can select the edges in the corner like this, and I'll do all 4 corners. Just shift and double click them. I get them all, yep. And again, we're going to hold control, and middle mouse drag to the left a little bit. That's going to push those in just a hair. We don't want to do it too much. So when I smooth it now, you can see that you kind of get that line there sort of implying that these are 2 separate pieces of wood. Okay, so let me see. Maybe I push it in a little bit more. So undo back, hold control, middle mouse drag. Now I don't want to overdo it. Okay, maybe something like that. Okay, and then if you want to, if you want to really accentuate it, you can bevel it. And I hope I don't crash here. Okay, there we go. And for whatever reason, it deselected, so I'll just... Oh, you know what? It beveled everything. I don't know why it did that. Let's try that again. Okay, it's going to do it again. So I'm just going to go... When it's done, I'm going to undo. I'm going to just reselect them. I don't know why it's beveling the whole object like that, so I'm just going to reselect those. And then bevel. There we go. So something like that, maybe make it a really tight bevel. So now when we smooth it, you can actually see the seams very well on those 2 pieces of wood. Okay, so that's a nice little detail you can put in there. That actually works really nice for that. Okay, so this is now modeled and complete. So let's just name this. This is the frame. And this is the board. Okay, let's UV the board first. So select that, Control 1 and Control 1 again to hide everything else. And I'm just going to switch to my UV editing screen here. So default UV is obviously not very good. So I'm going to go to UV. I'm going to open the settings for planar. Usually I will plane from the Z-axis. Again, make sure this keep image width height ratio is turned on. But this time I'm going to project from the Y-axis because it's a top-down view. So I just hit project and you see that it just projects from the top. And then I can get my 3D Cut and Sew UV tool. Go to edge, click this edge that's connected to this bottom seam, and then click one up, right? You can't click, if an edge is not connected to a seam, you click on it, it's not going to turn into a seam. It has to be connected to a previous seam. And any thick white line is a seam there. So if I do that, I gotta click it. Sometimes I gotta do it twice. There we go. I'm not gonna double click because if I double click, it's gonna go too far. I don't want it to cut all the way to there. I just want it to cut these two little edges in here and just open up from there. So here to here. And this one, click there. If it doesn't go the first time, click it again. It should go. Okay, so they're all done. Right click, component, UV shell, select everything, hit D. Okay, and you can see there's a little bit of curve and everything, which I really don't want because chessboards have to be straight. So I'm going to open unfold and hit optimize. And you can see that optimize will eventually, I just have to keep hitting it. It'll eventually straighten it out. Okay, you don't have to sit here for an hour pressing it, but and notice that I pressed it a few times, so it's going to just process. Okay, that's about as straight as I can hope for. Open arrange and layout, just orient shells just to line it up, and hit optimize a few times, and that's good. I'm okay with that. Now we could call that good and move on. But what I like to do in a situation like this is to have each of these squares be a separate shell. And the reason I like to do that is because that makes it easier to texture them later. Okay, so we're going to split them, and we just need to figure out where to split them. What I can do is just go to multi-cut and basically split each one of these through. So if I hold control and middle mouse click in here, it's going to put an edge loop dead center of that. And again, control middle mouse click, and we're just going to go through and do that. Okay, it's a little bit more work, but it'll be worth it. And also the one going around, I'm going to do the same thing. Control middle mouse click, and then we'll do the ones going this way. Control middle mouse, and so on. Oops. There we go. Okay, so we're just splitting this so we can then cut along there with the 3D Cut and Sew UV tool. So just make sure you got them all, and the one that goes around the top of the board as well. Then we can go back to 3D Cut and Sew UV tool, edge mode, and we're just going to select that center line that we just put in there. Just double click it, right? Double click this one, and notice now this is its own shell, right? And the more of these we do, the more shells we'll get. So just double click. Like let's go this way first. Double click. Double click. Oh, there's one I missed here, so go back into multi-cut, split that. There's a few I missed. Okay. Right. Okay, so let's try that again. 3D Cut and Sew. Select the center line, double click it. There's another shell, and so on. Okay. Now, what you'll notice with the 3D Cut and Sew tool, if I cut this edge right here, this middle one, it's going to stop when it hits another seam. It's not going to go all the way. So what I can do is get out of, just hit Q to get out of that tool. Go into edge mode, just double click that edge, and shift, double click all these edges. So we're just going to cut them at once, and maybe this one too. So shift, double click them. Oops. Let's try that again. Shift, double click. There we go. Okay. And what that's going to allow me to do is just come here in the UV toolkit and open up Cut and Sew and just hit cut, and it'll just cut seams right away. And look, now we have, you can see because we all have different colors here, that we have different shells. In fact, if I go into UV shell mode, now this one here for some reason did not cut, which is why it's the same color. So it's just a quick, oh, it's just an edge loop I missed. So I'm just going to select, double click this edge loop and go cut. And there we go. Now if I go in here in UV shell, as I hover over these, they should just be single squares. Okay, so just I mean, as long as these look similar in color, but you can see that they are indeed separate. Okay, so these corners are fine to be one. Now, you know what? Let's go ahead and cut these. So right click, go to edges, double click and cut. That way we can separate them too if we want. Double click that and cut. So you can do all this in the UV editor. You don't have to do it all in the viewport, in the 3D view. So just cut and cut. Okay, so now everything is its own separate shell. Now, when we pack our UVs, did I get this one? No, I didn't get this one. So let's go to edge. Thought I cut it. I guess I didn't. There we go. Now, when we pack UVs, typically we want a little bit of space between shells. And these are right on top of each other. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select, just pick a UV shell, select one. Just close, cut, and sew, close, unfold, close, arrange, layout. Open up transform, get the textile density, which in this case is 26. Again, that number doesn't matter. I want them to be a little bit smaller than they are. I want to shrink everything down so they shrink a little bit and form a gap between them. So let's try 25. Let's put a 25 in here. So just put a little bit less than whatever number you got. Select all of these UV shells and hit set. And you see they shrunk a little bit, maybe a little bit more. Let's go 24. You know, whatever number it is for you. It may not be 25. So let's set this. And there we go. That looks pretty good. Right? So just to give them a little bit of gap, because what happens sometimes when you texture, there's color bleeding from, you know, over. And if they're right next to each other, you might see some of those colors bleed between them. So that's pretty good right there. Okay, so that is good. The chessboard is going to have its own UV tile right there. So that's done. All we got to do now is delete history, edit, delete by type history, or Alt-Shift-D. And then modify, freeze transformations, just to make sure that it's set. Now we're going to do this guy. So Control-1. And if you had it smooth, just press 1 to unsmooth it. Now notice again, default UVs are not very good. So we're just going to do a planar, and because we already set it to project from the top, it'll do that. 3D Cut and Sew UV tool in edge mode. Double click that seam, double click that seam. That one right there. And we got to zoom in to get this middle edge right through here. Right, it's going to split that all the way. And then we're going to just cut all the way around this. Right, so we're just going to split this all the way. Now you might have to zoom in. Notice how here, and this is an N-gon, but it's on the bottom of the board, so I'm not going to waste my time with it. So just click these two to connect them. I got to make sure I do that all the way around the board. Okay, click there and there. You want those to turn white like that, which they have. Right, if the colors are getting a little too much, just put your mouse in the UV editor and hit 4. It'll turn off the colors. To turn them back on is 5. And we're just going to cut, zoom right in here, cut there, cut there. So I'm just clicking there. No need to double click it. Just click because they are connected to seams. And again here, there, and then we can double click this one. Okay. Zoom in here. This one's already done. Double click that one. So that's going to separate this bottom plate as its own UV shell. There we go. Okay, I think I got all 4. Now, actually, I just realized I didn't mean to cut this edge loop here. So to undo that, you hold Control, just double click it, it'll stitch it back up. Right, so now we can continue this. Let's cut all the way around here. And again, same thing here. We just have to connect these. That one, I got the wrong one. Control click, it'll unmark it as a seam. There. Come in here, double click here, then come in real close. There and there. Okay, again, those are n-gons, but they're minor n-gons that are in the middle of that are hidden underneath here. Now, if you really wanted to change them, you can just select these 3 points and merge them down to 1 point. Right. You could do that, or I'll show you another way here. Let me just finish doing this. Let's get in there. Okay, you got to get used to navigating around tight little spots like that. It can be a pain in the butt, but it's part of the game. Okay, so I've got them all. So now, if you want to clean up this n-gon, if it's bugging you, Q to get out of 3D Cut and Sew. I'm going to shift right click, go to multi-cut, and all I got to do is multi-cut from this corner to this corner. Now these are four-sided. There's 2 four-sideds on each side. Okay, so if we want to be sort of good modelers and follow the rules, right? We get rid of n-gon, so we can just cut here to here and do it on the other corner. There to there. And I believe I have one more from here to here, right? So that they should all be done now. Yep. And on the bottom, we can do the same thing, right? Because we got an angle. So I'll cut from here to there. Cut there to there. And there to there. And I believe we have one more. Okay, so just to be good modelers, we should do that. Okay. Make sure that all the corners have been cut, which I believe they have. Then we switch back to the 3D Cut and Sew UV tool, right click, component, UV shell. Select everything, hit D, and there we go. So this is the bottom, this is that top face, and these are the 4 sides. Now, I'm going to open Arrange and Layout and hit Orient Shells. Now, these, again, because we are simulating wood, we know that the wood grain runs in a certain direction. So if I said wood texture, you notice that any images you get of wood, the grain always runs in one direction. So if we're going to use this as the wood texture for our chessboard, we need to make sure that all these pieces are oriented the same way. Because what's going to happen if we use this image as our wood texture, you see that it's going horizontally, which on here would look fine, but on these, going horizontally like this, it would not look right. So what that means is all of the wood pieces, hit Q to get out of there, go to UV shell, select these. These need to be rotated so they're the same. They could all be vertical or all be horizontal, doesn't matter. But they all need to be one way or the other. They need to be the same way, all 4 of them. Because even if we did use this texture, which is going horizontal, we could always just rotate it 90 degrees if we had them going vertically. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So now I'm going to take these pieces here are not important. One is the bottom of the frame. One is the top of the frame. I'm just going to scale them real small. We don't really care too much about these pieces. Then for these pieces, I'm just going to say layout. You know what? Let's do it manually. I'm just going to put them next to each other. Put a little space in between them. Don't. And you know, I forgot to optimize. So open, unfold, and optimize just a little bit. See if if anything will happen. Not a whole lot is going on here. Okay, so now I'm going to select these, and I'm going to scale them up so they can be as big as possible inside of this UV square, something like that. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. This is now UV'd, right? If I look at it here, it's now UV'd. If we want to put our checker map on there to see, so assign existing Lambert 2, hit 6 in here, and there it is. You see these and these are big because they're shrunk down small. but that's not the important part anyway. Okay, if I hit Control 1 to bring these back, let's select both these and Control 1 again. I'm going to put the checkerboard on the chessboard. Okay, so you can see that we're good. Now, the chessboard itself, let's turn this off, and the frame do not have to be the same textile density because they're two different materials. This is so the wood, and this can be made of anything. So they don't have to match textile density wise. So the squares don't have to be the same size. Okay, so that is now, both of these are now UV'd and ready to go. I'm going to edit, delete by type history on both of them, and just again modify delete, freeze transformations on both of them. Right, so now they're nice and clean. But because this is going to be one object, we can't have the UVs overlapping. So I'm going to go to the frame here, UV shell, select everything. Then I'm going to go back in my UV toolkit right here, move it over one UV tile. So now we have the board and the frame. Okay, so that is now set up and ready for the texturing process. Okay, so there we go. Again, if I hit 5 to turn off the texture, you can see what we have. Now, the pieces, you know, we've UV'd them and done all that, right? So if I select my pieces here, you'll see that everything's been UV'd and laid out and ready to go. We might as well at this point now lay them out on the board. Now, before I do that, I'm going to select everything, the pieces and the board. And I'm just going to assign a new material. Let's put a surface shader on there. No, I'm sorry, not a surface shader. Let's undo that. Right click, assign favorite material, and do a standard surface. That's what I meant. Okay, and then if it's too bright, we can sort of lower it like that. Okay, just to have everything have the same shader on there. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of my UV editor because I'm done with that. Now, what I'm going to do is actually set up the pieces on the board. Okay, so I'm going to select these pieces, just move them this side, select these pieces, move them that way so they're not blocking my board here. Then I'm going to take all my pawns, and I'm going to just move them. So if we say that this is one side, this is the other side, gonna move that pawn, deselect it, move this one, deselect that one, and just move them over and just deselect. So I'm always working on the last, always working on the last one. So control click to deselect it, and then control click. Notice that I'm not trying to make them perfectly centered. I actually want them to be slightly off. Okay, so we can, you know, grab this box here, just move them so that they look like they're placed by just a regular person. There's not somebody that's, they shouldn't be so perfect because, you know, it's computer graphics. It's easy to make things perfect. So I'm just going to make them a little crooked. So if I look down the line of them, you can see that they're really crooked, which is good. Okay. Then on either side, we have a rook. So I'm just going to grab this rook, put it there. Grab this other rook, put it there. Okay, so again, if you don't know the layout of chess pieces, you can just pull up chessboard or whatever. You'll see the layouts right here. Okay, so then it's the bishops. One goes here. One goes here. Sorry, it's not the bishops. It's the knights. So the bishops are the next after the knights. So I'll just move the bishops there. Take a knight, move it there. Take another knight, move it there. And then with the king and the queen is always on the same color square as him. So the dark queen will be on the dark square. I'm sorry, the dark king will be on the dark square, and then the light king will be on the light square. So just keep that in mind, unless I'm reading this wrong. Actually, no, that's the king. That was the queen. So the dark king will be on the light square. So if we're looking at it this way, the king will be on the right and on both. So the king is always to the right of the queen. So even here, the queen faces the queen, the king faces the king. Okay, so unless I'm totally messing that up, that's what we're going to do. So looking at it like this, the king will be on the right square. So grab him, move him there, grab the queen, move her there. Now, notice that my knights are just perfectly straight on. So I'm going to slightly rotate them a little bit in the y-axis. Maybe rotate this guy a little bit more this way. Same with the bishops. I don't want them to be so perfectly, just randomly just rotate some of these pieces so they're not perfect like that. Okay, now we do the other side. Let's grab all the pawns. Move them to the second row here. Control click, and so on. And there. Okay, and again, we don't want to be in such a straight line. Just gonna move something like that. Okay, it's so easy being on a computer to make things mathematically perfect where they are dead center of the square, all facing exact, and it looks terrible, right? So you want to put some imperfection in there. So rooks, this one will go here. This one will go here. The knights, I'll turn them around here in a minute. I just want to place them first. Bishops. The queen goes to the left. The king goes to, actually the queen faces the other queen. So this queen will be over here. And that queen will be over here. No, that king will be over here. Okay, now we can kind of just rotate randomly. I'm not looking at the numbers. So this guy will be here. Rotate you a little bit. You can rotate the pawns too, but that doesn't really, you can't really tell with the pawns, so I'm not too worried about those. So there we go. So now our chess set is set up. And I just want to make sure, again, I'm going to bring back my UV editor. I want to make sure that I have all the right ones on each side. So if I select all these pieces here, yep, it should be one row, and then the other pieces should be the other row. That's good. Okay, so now this chessboard, everything is UV'd. Everything, we'll just make sure we'll just delete history, freeze transformations, and we should be good to now take this and go texture it. Okay, so from there we'll get into Substance Painter in class and do the textures. All right, there you go, guys. See you in class.